In this lecture, we will discuss how the muscular and skeletal systems work together to produce movement of the body. We will look at how muscles got their names, which will help you learn the origins, insertions, and slash or actions of the major muscles of the body. Finally, we will identify the major muscles of the body and the origin, insertion, and action of each. We have already learned that there are 3 types of muscle tissue: 1 skeletal, 2 cardiac, and 3 smooth. When we discuss muscle as an organ system, we are referring to skeletal muscle only and its connective tissue coverings. Although our muscular system allows us to perform an array of movements, muscles can only pull, they can't push. The origin of a muscle is on the fixed or immovable point of attachment. This is usually a bone. The insertion is its attachment on the movable bone. When the muscle contracts, the insertion moves toward the origin. As a general rule of thumb, especially when referring to the appendicular muscles, the origin is proximal and the insertion is distal. Typically, as a muscle contracts or shortens, its insertion moves toward its origin, obviously moving the articulating bones along with it. Muscles work in groups, so whatever one group does, there's an opposing group that performs the opposite movement. Most muscles cross at least one joint with the exception of the muscles of facial expression. As mentioned previously, muscles do not act alone. They function in groups or pairs. Muscles that cross joints and are located on opposite sides of the bones forming the joint oppose each other in their actions. For example, flexors are usually on the ventral side of a joint, whereas their antagonists, the extensors, are located on the dorsal side. Muscles are classified into 4 functional groups: prime movers, antagonists, synergists, and fixators. A muscle that is providing the major force for a particular movement is called the prime mover or agonist. Most movements are the result of combined activities of muscle groups that work together to create precise or steady movements. The muscles that are assisting the prime mover are called synergists. They prevent instability, unwanted movements, and help the prime mover to work more efficiently. A fixator is a special type of synergist that immobilizes the origin of a prime mover so that all the force generated by the muscle is exerted at its insertion. Muscles that oppose or perform the reverse activity of the prime mover are called antagonists. When a prime mover is contracting, the antagonist must be relaxed or stretched. Antagonists also prevent overshoot of the movement by helping to slow down the prime mover. Muscles are attached to bones with tendons. When dissecting muscles, you may be directed to cut through the belly of a muscle and reflect it so you can view deeper muscle groups. The belly of a muscle is the meaty or thickest part of the muscle that usually lies midway between the muscle's tendon attachments. Make a single, clean cut through the belly and then fold the cut parts back towards the tendons. That's what reflecting means. As discussed in the previous lecture, skeletal muscle fibers are wrapped by the perimysium into fascicles that are arranged in different patterns that are related to the muscle's action in the body. For example, muscles that have their fascicles arranged in parallel bundles usually perform limited types of movement, such as the biceps brachii muscle, which is a prime mover of flexion. Other muscles that have their fascicles arranged in a fan-like pattern permit a greater variety of movement at the joint depending on which fascicles are active. For example, the pectoralis major functions to flex, adduct, and medially rotate the arm. Furthermore, the arrangement of a muscle's fascicles not only determines range of motion, but also is related to the degree of power or force the muscle can generate. Muscles with parallel fascicle arrangements shorten the most, but they are not usually very powerful. Muscles with more fibers generate the greatest force, but can't shorten very much. The most common patterns of fascicle arrangement are depicted on this slide, figure 10.1 in your textbook. Muscles that have their fascicles arranged in a circular pattern of concentric rings usually surround external openings to the body. These muscles are called sphincters. When these muscles contract, they close the opening. Examples would include the muscles that surround the eyes and mouth. Convergent muscles have a broad origin, and their fascicles converge onto a single tendon that inserts onto the bone. Parallel muscles have their fascicles running along the long axis of the muscle. These muscles can be flat straps, like many of the muscles in our necks, or can be spindle-shaped fusiform, with an expanded belly like the biceps brachii muscle we discussed in the previous slide. Pennant muscles have short fascicles that attach obliquely to a central tendon. They have a feather-like arrangement to their fascicles. Pennant comes from penno, which means feather. If the fascicles insert on one side of the tendon, the muscle is unipennate. If the fascicles insert into the tendon from opposite sides, the muscle is bipennate. Multipennate muscles look like several feathers grouped together that join one tendon. Multipennate muscles don't shorten much, but because they have so many fibers, they are quite powerful. When we perform various activities, our skeletal muscles use leverage to make the movement easier or reduce the amount of effort that must be invested. The lever systems of the body result from the combination of the muscular and skeletal systems. A lever is a rigid bar that moves on a fixed point, which is called the fulcrum when a force is applied. The applied force is used to move a resistance or load. In the body, the levers are the bones, the fulcrum is a joint, and muscle contraction provides the effort which is applied at the muscle's insertion point on the bone. The load can be the bone itself or can be objects that you want to move. If the load is close to the fulcrum, as shown in this diagram, and the applied effort is at a relatively long distance from the fulcrum, a small effort can move a large load over a small distance. This is an example of a power lever operates at a mechanical advantage. For example, in the diagram, a jack is being used to lift a car. The CR moves only a tiny bit with each downward push, but relatively little muscular effort is necessary to move the heavy load. The lever system shown in here is a speed lever operates at a mechanical disadvantage. In this case, the load is far from the fulcrum and the effort is applied close to the fulcrum. The force exerted by the muscle must be greater than the load moved. These levers provide rapid contractions with a wide range of motion. In short, effort farther than load from fulcrum equal mechanical advantage. Effort nearer than load to fulcrum equal mechanical disadvantage. In general, levers can change the applied force in three ways. 1. The direction of the applied force, the distance and speed of the movement, and the effective strength. Levers are classified based on the relative position of the three elements: effort, fulcrum, and load. In first-class levers, the arrangement of the elements is load, fulcrum, effort. The effort is applied at one end of the lever, the load is at the other, and the fulcrum is in between. Examples of common first-class levers that you have encountered in your life outside of A and P include seesaws and scissors. Second-class levers are power levers. In second-class lever systems, the effort is applied at one end of the lever and the fulcrum is located at the other, with the load between them. Thus, the arrangement of the elements is fulcrum load effort. This type of lever system is used when you carry a load in a wheelbarrow or when you stand on your toes. Third-class levers have the effort applied between the load and the fulcrum. These levers operate with great speed and extensive movement with little shortening of the muscle, but they are always at a mechanical disadvantage. Most skeletal muscles in the body act in third-class lever systems. Skeletal muscles are named based on several criteria that have something to do with the size, shape, location, direction of the muscle fibers, number of origins: biceps, triceps, quadriceps, placement of the origin, and insertion or action of the muscle. When you study the muscles of the body, keep these characteristics in mind because they will assist you greatly as you memorize the major muscles of the body and their actions. They will also help you in your dissections because you will have some idea of identifying characteristics of the muscle. The following series of slides give you some common examples. For example, in this slide of the abdominal muscles, we can see how muscles are named based on the direction in which their fibers run. Rectus is a word that means straight, so a muscle with the word rectus in it means the fibers run parallel to the midline of the body. A muscle with the word transversus means that the fascicles run perpendicular to the midline. Oblique in a muse. Clinae means that the fibers run diagonally to the midline. Muscles may also be named according to their relative size. That is, of course, if there is more than one muscle in the group that is either larger, smaller, or intermediate in size. For example, if there's a muscle with maximus in its name, there's going to be a related muscle with minimus, and perhaps a medius in its name. If there's a longus, there's a similar muscle that's shorter called brevis. If there's a major, there's a minor, and so on. Above are some examples of muscles named based on size. Muscles are sometimes named based on their shape. This will help you when you are trying to identify muscles when dissecting. If the muscle you are looking for has orbicularis in its name, then you know you are looking for a circular muscle. Pilates refers to flat muscles. Gracilis means slender. Trapezius means the muscle is shaped like a trapezoid. One of the most useful to the student, that is criteria, for naming muscles is to include its action, what it does in its name. Here are some other examples of action names. Sometimes several of the naming criteria are combined into a single name. Thus, if you learn the muscle, you have also learned its origin, insertion, and action. For example, the flexor carpi radialis is a muscle that 1 flexes to the wrist. 3 is on the side of the forearm closest to the radius. Names may also describe origins and insertions. In this case, the origin comes first and the insertion is last. For example, the sternocleidomastoid has 2 origins, one on the sternum, the other, and the clavicle, and it inserts on the mastoid process of the temporal bone. Understanding muscle naming conventions can certainly help you learn much about each muscle.